No. Okay. It's interesting. When I share it, everything disappears except controls. So I don't get to see anybody anymore.
All right, everybody, welcome back to our 6 p.m. presentation for this Intimate Partner Violence Awareness Month Summit. Up next, we do have Reverend Judy Hamilton, who is a high priestess of the Correllian Nativist Church, and she's going to be talking about this issue from a prevention standpoint. So keep those eyes and ears open. Reverend Judy is a licensed clinical social worker and has been doing this work for a very long time and actually does have a lot of experience from the forensic point of view. So I am going to go ahead and turn it over to her. Take it away.
Thank you for the introduction. I don't know. I have lots of experience. Sounds like she's old. I know that's not what's intended. Um, so when we look at interpersonal violence, many people go with romantic, intimate relationships is what they think about with the violence. And for this presentation, I want to look at it more within the community, uh, because emotional, mental, and sometimes even physical violence starts first at the social level and societal level. So I really wanted to talk a little bit more about that. So, um, primary prevention begins in the community, because when we accept these behaviors on a societal basis, it's easier for it to transition into the home or into relationships. So I kind of wanted to go over like red flags. And we can see this in organizations, fraternal orders, even within temples. So I want to help people learn how to recognize it on a broader scale and how to set some healthy boundaries. The information that I'm using in terms of the warning signs comes from the Centers for Disease Control. And I compare and contrast the warning signs with the Correllian philosophy and ministry to show how a healthy community prevents violence through its leadership and its mission statements and how it conducts itself. Um, so one of the first warning signs to look out for with any organization or community is, are they trying to isolate you? Are they limiting your freedom, stopping you from getting in touch with people, doing things that you would normally do? From a Wiccan standpoint, my experience with some of my first covens was I was no longer, I was told if I wanted to be a part, I could not attend PPD. I was not allowed to go to public rituals, and they even wanted to limit where I did my shopping as far as where if I bought any supplies. And I also want to say during this presentation, please don't find it necessary to mute. Interrupt me at any time with any of your own experiences, so that we can make this much more of a sharing environment rather than my just presenting a lecture. Um, so some of the things to look at, even within the Correllian tradition, because while we do the shrines, proto-temples, temples, we are international. And while we can look at things on paper, people can look at things on paper. So we want to make sure that we are in a safe environment, that we are being allowed to still be our individuals and while participating in our beliefs. So from the Correllian philosophy, the variation of approach assures that all who seek can find. If one version of God does not speak to a person, there will be another. It is the quality of the seeker's desire to find truth, not the road chosen, that leads the seeker to God. What I appreciate about this is many people within our traditions came from, they didn't just say, oh, I want to be Wiccan, I'm joining the tradition. Some of us, like myself, went to a variety of groups before we were able to find our home. And I don't know if anybody else had that experience. Anybody else out there that sought other paths first before they were able to find us?
I don't necessarily think it was I was searching for other paths, but I was definitely solitary for 16 years before fully researching and joining, finally, the Corellian tradition.
Mm-hmm. See, and that's part of, and what I appreciate about our tradition is those 16 years of experience count for something. And when we look at like the Parliament of World Religions, we're actually encouraged to seek out other people and to interact with other groups and to share. Not, it's a secret, you have to be part of this group and you don't hang out with anybody else. The coven or temple is your only socialization. That some of our members actually belong to multiple temples, because I do have people in my temple that have their own temple but want to participate and support us. Does that make sense? I'm a big one that I will ask on this, so if anybody has any questions before I move on. If someone's trying to get you alone and tell you we're the only people you can hang out with, and that goes for groups outside of spiritual beliefs also. Rejection. Rejecting your thoughts, your suggestions, your ideas, your opinions, my way or the highway. You're going to do it the way that we do it, or don't do it at all. Within our own ritual in theory and practice book, things change from Sabbath to Sabbath. It's not, if you don't call the quarters in using these specific words, you're doing it wrong. You want to find leaders who are open-minded to those experiences. Everybody get that? And as it says, according to our philosophy, we believe that all paths lead ultimately to the same source, and that we must respect each other's different ways of expressing this. And I see that even within regalia. The way people do their Witten collar is unique to that individual. Our sashes, our cords are all individualized. It's not, you must make your cords this way with this type of weaving and you must use this fabric. So we allow the individualism and celebrate it rather than rejecting it. Okay. Causing you fear, making you feel afraid, intimidated, or threatened. I've experienced this with initiations and manipulations for sexual relations, where if you actually want to get your third degree, you have to have sex with a member, whether that's within your comfort zone or not. While we do everybody here's, and this one's been initiated. Okay. Blindfolding. If you have somebody though who has claustrophobia, are you really going to force them into something that could cause them to have a breakdown and cause more damage than harm? So we want to make sure with the read on the do no harm, that we are all brothers and sisters, and while we may have a way that we traditionally do something, if that makes the other individual feel afraid, intimidated, or threatened, then we need to take that into account. And One of the things that I appreciate within the Corellian tradition is even with the mentors, when we get someone new, we ask them, what do I need to be aware of so that I can be of more help for you? Is there a medical condition? Is there something happening? How can I help you? That we do what we can to make people feel family and not afraid or intimidated. Um, so, in bullying, our purpose in life as human beings is to build each other up, not to show that I'm better than, not to show that I'm smarter than, and not ever putting anything down. Um, Best quote I ever heard in my life is the only time that I should be looking down on somebody is when I'm offering a hand to lift them up. And I try to keep with that. Um, Put downs, calling you names, any type of derogatory comments, or how come you don't know that? If you'd read the assignment, not everybody is going to learn in the same way. That while we have the online forum and the books, some people don't retain solely through reading, and we shouldn't make comments. And if somebody is making comments, they need to be called out for that. No one should ever be made to feel small, particularly not when you're in an environment that is supposed to help you become the best person you can be in this lifetime. Um, Outside of even religion groups, we can look at things like sororities or fraternities. There was a sorority when I was at Michigan State that part of their hazing was their pledges would have to get naked, and the other members took Sharpies and drew on them the areas of their body that they needed to improve. That is violence, that is abusive, and that is not a healthy organization to be a part of. Okay, so what can you do? This is where we work on recognizing, okay, I have to take a break because my husband's going and doing the right thing. He just grabbed his book so he can study while he works on achieving his second degree, and I want to give him an attaboy for that. Um, and because I know his mentor is listening in, so he can get an attaboy from her because he was like, "Oh, I see her." Okay. Um, what do we do individually to participate in society and the community to spread universal truth, universal life, helping those who come to us through mentorship, through our temples, through friendships, and even through the Facebook pages within our tradition, to be supportive, to be an advisor, to be the friend. Um, Great quote that I have is, do you want to be the boss or do you want to be the leader? Bosses tell people what to do, leaders encourage people to follow them. So we want to try and be the leader, encouraging people through our own actions, through our behaviors on how to live the right life and how to treat others accordingly. Because all of us descend from Goddess and God. We're all spiritual beings living a physical life and should show that respect. And when you see somebody not doing that, it is our duty as a member of a society to kind of call them out and to let other people know this isn't the right way to do things. So I can stop sharing. Phoenix, I'm very bad at timing. I don't know. So kind of now I wanted to try and do an open forum and see what anybody has to say, questions, experiences. how we can be better leaders within our community to stop violence there so that it doesn't actually get into the home, where people learn this behavior is not acceptable and that everybody deserves respect. Yes, no?
Okay, so I had a question.
Okay.
What institutional policies need to change in order to support accountability towards abusers within a church and without?
In that regard, it comes to the best thing I would say is if while while we do have federal laws in place for like places of employment with equal opportunity within a church, unfortunately, because of the First Amendment, there's not a lot of recourse because they're allowed to do whatever they want in the name of their religious beliefs. So then it comes down to the community coming together to say this is not behavior that we're willing to accept, to adapt it. Phoenix, you have any feedback on that one? No.
No, I think you really nailed it as far as that is concerned. I was wondering if you could talk about any ways of organizing celebration or ritual to enhance any individual workings that people might be doing to combat this issue.
I just realized because the slide didn't pop up. Um, for me personally, I feel the Corellian peace prayer helps because that expands. It's not so much the individual relationship with God or goddess. It's not a ritual or a prayer with a desired personal outcome, but it's healing for not just the self, but the local society and the world as a whole. So thank you. Yes, I had that. I was like, wait a minute, I should have had one more slide, but it didn't come up. So I do the peace prayer monthly, usually on the new moon. I know that's not necessarily when the order does it, but I want it to grow and go out as the moon grows out so that peace comes to society and to our planet. Because normally when you find people in these positions of being abused, it's out of a sense of fear. In intimate relationships and having worked in a prison system with serial rapists, it's not about the relationship. It is about power. So it's the emotional abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse is an attempt to retain control. So when others come together, they can take that control away by saying, this is not behavior that is acceptable. We are now going to show how the group should be done or how society. So, yeah, I'll bring it up. Right now, our country is in such chaos. And that's where I look within the community. And when I see these communities coming together to say, no, this behavior is no longer acceptable, I love it. I applaud it. I think it's phenomenal. My regret is that we have to continually do this about every 50 years to bring it back up and have this new spiritual awakening within our country on what behaviors are okay. However, as long as people continue to rise up and say, no, I will not let you treat my brother or my sister like this anymore, we come to a greater sense of healing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the origins of our faith on this continent is built on protest and reclaiming personal power.
Right.
So, oh yeah, there it is.
It's the strength in numbers. But when we heal at a societal level, at a country level, at a planetary level, we're able to heal better at the personal level. So that if we can get people to get along with their neighbors, with their coworkers, uh, it comes back home better. Because when we look at interpersonal violence, once again, it's that control. So if I don't feel respected at work, and I feel I have no say in my job, and I'm not respected for what I'm doing there, I'm bringing that frustration home. I'm bringing it into the relationship because I have no other outlet. So I will release it there in an attempt to gain some form of control. So if we want to minimize the abuse in the home, we start higher up the ladder so that people feel that they have some self power within their organizations. Did that answer your question, Jen? Because I don't know, other than banding together as a community, you get to be the lone voice until others say, yes, I agree with you. Um, and sometimes it's the when we stand for something, we'll find that others stand with us.
Yes, yes, you
Oh,
did. Thank you so much.
thank you. If I've been long-winded, I'm sorry.
It's totally great. I love hearing you talk.
Well, yeah, I feel like I'm back as a professor, and I didn't like doing lectures. So that's why I'd rather have this be an open communication as far as what you've experienced, others, times when we've been successful by saying, no, that's not acceptable. We won't tolerate you doing this.
Do you suppose that it's a self-perpetuating cycle, like say with your example, bringing it home? So say, would you say that you were like the abuser of yourself when you brought it home and you didn't get respect? What like situations would prevent that? Like, what could you put into effect that would stop you from beating yourself up, you know?
So, yeah, unfortunately, so it starts in childhood. Um, famous that every single person has this belief at the core of them that they're not good enough. It can be in second grade, we got picked last for kickball. And so oh, I'm not good enough. Nobody wanted me on their team. Now, I may rock at tennis, but oh, tennis is no big deal. What I focus on is I'm not very good in kickball. And so we carry this, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. And within our societal systems, what we see is proof of not being good enough. And we kind of dismiss what we're good at. Um, and that gives that feeling of powerlessness that I don't own myself, that I can't affect any change because that's what I see is I see my mistakes. So when someone says, "Hey, you look really nice today." Oh, I got this at a thrift store. Because we're still maintaining that I'm not enough instead of saying, "Thank you, I appreciate you. I did a really good job dressing myself today." Um, so it starts there. Um, I'm being okay in our own skin, and most people are not comfortable in their own skin to be able to say, no, that behavior is not acceptable. So when we find the few enlightened people, which hopefully all of us here are, we can stand up and then we can empower others to stand up. And that's kind of how it would grow to start breaking that cycle of the only way I feel I have power is to dominate others versus if I'm comfortable with me, then I can be comfortable with you. And then we can make together, we can make the whole group feel comfortable within their own skins.
Right. So it's you break the cycle for you personally, and then you're able to become the leader as opposed to the boss.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
you can do it without the title. You can just say, hey, I really appreciate what you did there. And when I do that, and I have people go, well, that's my job. That's what I'm paid to do. Yes, but you did it well. So you need to be, and we don't compliment. We hear too much about Karens nowadays.
I did
And
that.
I make a point when I have service, and I have scared some of my servers at restaurants because I will ask for the manager to give them a compliment because they heard about the server who didn't bring the water fast enough, but they don't get to hear about the server who was on point and polite and happy. So I always make sure to provide a compliment before I leave rather than the criticism. Makes sense.
Oops.
So I think that's an example of ways that we can do something that's completely unexpected and just like delightfully turn around or change the course of someone else's day and impacting our communities in with a ripple effect of good intention.
Yeah, a little bit. It's kind of the pay it forward. So yeah, I can leave a tip, which I'm going to do, but also taking it out and going, gee, we got the virus going on, so you're not getting as many clients. But even though we're at 1/3 capacity in this restaurant, I noticed you've been running, but nobody was lacking. Great job. And I make sure that the boss knows so that they're like, oh, yeah, Sue's great. She's wonderful. And I was like, yeah, but you need to pay attention to that to make sure Sue doesn't go to a different restaurant. Oh. And it is just acknowledging the small things that people do. And that carries forward so that then when somebody is inappropriate, we can stand up better and be okay.
From a community mental health standpoint, giving random compliments and doing random acts of kindness in the community also sets the stage for some positive experiences that folks can use to combat some automatic negative thoughts and hurtful things that people deal with as a result of being under so much stress.
Well, that, and then here's where the interesting thing does come into play within community is your official power and your unofficial power. So now we'll get into some heavy duty macro social work. We all know who the leaders are because they have the titles. But if you've ever been in a job, he's the boss man, but it's the secretary that's actually keeping things running smoothly. So she's or he is actually the unofficial power because I know if I want something done, I don't go to my supervisor. I go to my medical support assistant because she's actually going to get the work done for me. And so when we start increasing that informal power structure, the formal power structure has to listen. Does that make sense? Because it's been
Oh, yeah.
the influence. To go back to when we were with Jen's first question on, okay, what can we do? Pay attention to who everybody's actually listening to. Because while this person might have the title of high priest, it's actually the other guy who acts as guardian in ritual that's actually running things. And so we can work with him to then change the mood within the organization. Questions, comments? Everybody's so quiet. We should have done this as a happy hour presentation.
I know, right? I was curious.
I would say people would be more talkative then. That's why.
This is definitely true. I was curious about how you you notice this in your practice when you, in order to come to this presentation and teaching it how you do. How did you notice first that there was a problem?
The first brick trad coven that I tried to join, that I was interested because, and this is what happens when you're looking with new people. You're eager, you're enthusiastic, and because of that not good enough belief, we always want to try and make a good first impression. So we're often willing to go along with things even though we don't feel comfortable with them. So we'll allow ourselves to be bullied. And what I noticed in going to the classes, they were slowly isolating me from all the people that I was friends with, well, no, you need to do this. No, you need to do this. You have to be sponsored by a member of the opposite sex. And that person who agreed to be my sponsor was actually nothing more than just a dirty old man who I fully believe was Wiccan solely so that he could have sex with young women. And it took almost a year before I had the courage to tell this to the high priest. And I moved away from that group because I was like, no, it didn't sit right in my spirit. And when I reflected back and was going to school to become a therapist, I'm like, wait a minute, here's all the red flags. That's why I didn't feel comfortable with this group. And I was in a sorority and marching band, and now I'm with the VA. And I see this happening within the different branches of the service, even. And the institutional abuse for new people to earn their stripes. And I was like, no, this is the behavior that then they say, why are all these veterans committing suicide? Well, because they had a drill sergeant that told them to suck it up, buttercup. And we can't have that because we're not just killing the spirits of people, we're killing them physically. And when people start to stand up and go, no, you can't treat me like this, but it takes, depending on how ingrained it is within the organization, it's going to take a while, which is also why I believe why we do have these social upheavals about every 50 years, is when people finally say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's very insightful.
Thank you.
I've actually had a similar experience with recent times where apparently people still think that covens are, for lack of a better term, orgies.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, that it's for, we're supposed to hook up and have random sex in order to celebrate the goddess. And now, I don't have a problem with that if every participant is consenting. But when you feel societal pressure with, we won't initiate you, or you're not really being a part of, so that you're being pressured into doing it, then no, then that's abuse.
I totally agree.
And that's when you stand up and go, no, not acceptable. Can't do this. And that's where you see that they'll start it through the isolation, because then you have no one to go talk to about it. Oh, Phoenix, I just saw your name. I love that you put the pronouns in.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, thank you so much for addressing the cycle of abuse from an organizational perspective is really invaluable. And I think that talking about it from an organizational level, from a community level, and then from an individual level definitely best illustrates the way that we can apply our principle of as above, so below to the work that we do.
Yes. And it harm none.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was kind of when, and Phoenix, thank you so much for doing this presentation, and organizing and all the hard work that you did on this. And that was kind of the thing, is I wanted to go outside of the box, because people always, when they hear IPV, they instantly assume domestic violence between a heterosexual couple with the woman being the victim. And I wanted to expand on that concept, that it interpersonal. That means between people, and it goes so much beyond just heterosexual romantic relationships with the male as abuser. That we get it from CEOs, we get it from all over. And when we do that, no, I'm not going to, this is not acceptable. And you can't, even standing up for someone else within the organization, no, you can't talk to her like that. Becomes more important.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. We do thank you so much for your time, Reverend Judy.
Thank you. I'm going to finish my
And
coffee.
we will be continuing this conversation at 8 o'clock with the Broken Mirror Psychology. Oh, I'm going to put my video on.
There we go.
Broken Mirror Psychology. And I'll be talking a little bit about that. And that is going to be the primary context for everything that I do in the men's track for the rest of this weekend. So anyone wants to can watch that. You can watch it directly on the website, bluedoorevents.weebly.com, on the page for Reverend Phoenix Coffin-Williams. Everything that you see here for this weekend will stay up for a good amount of time. That way folks can continue to access this and they can use it for their Blue Door studies. Our links will stay up. So Reverend Judy is a high priestess in the Karelian Nativist Church. Go ahead and hit her with some donation. Like, she put this together for us as an act of service. She didn't expect to get paid. So let's like fairly take and fairly give, and bless her. So this will stay up for a while until the next event, which will be December 1st. So that's when all this will stay up, and you'll have access to it until then. If you don't see it until then, womp womp. So sad.
And
You missed
Phoenix,
out.
if you would like, Phoenix, you can because you have access to the slide presentation, so you are more than welcome to legally steal it to have it available for people who couldn't get in on this.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good seeing everybody. Hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. And this is not being sexual, but I have to say, go Cox. That's my alumni. In South Carolina, we play the LSU Tigers, so I'm going up against Angela tomorrow and hoping that we can beat the national champions.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So, Ebony, if you could just go ahead and switch me back to host or end the YouTube feed.